Good afternoon. My name is Mark Goodman. I represent SCORE Chicago. You're watching live interactive call-in TV here on CANTV Hotline 21. We've got 4 shows to do until the studio moves, and then, we'll be on next year. Of course, we're supposed to have a much nicer studio. My guest today is Doug Nohe. Doug is the chapter chair of SCORE, so if you want to check in with Doug, there he is. I've got a couple of SCORE things I do want to talk about. We have some upcoming events. We're going to be on CANTV. I also wanted to highlight some of the SCORE workshops that are going on in July. Now, the workshops take place for the most part at the SCORE office at 500 West Madison. We also have some suburban workshops that are running in the northwest suburbs. So I'll show you that slide here. So just some highlights that we're running. We're doing buying and selling a business, QuickBooks, e-commerce for small business. It'll talk about selling online, using blogging to build your business, and a WordPress SEO one. And in the suburbs, we'll be doing websites and pricing, elevator pitch, and accounting. So if any of these workshops are of interest to you, you can check out our website. It's www.scorechicago.org. I'll give you that contact information at the end. So, Doug, we're here for our second CANTV interview. We did one last year. I was talking to the CANTV people. This is our 6th year of doing CANTVs. Amazing. So we've moved from being neophytes to being, I guess, CANTV veterans, if there is a thing. If you have a question relative to starting a business or your small business, you can give us a call at 312-738-1060. But if you'll hold off on those calls for a little bit, I do want to get a couple of things underway here with Doug. So if you'll hold off a little bit on calls, you can write them down and maybe get a call in about 10 minutes. So, Doug, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. The first thing I would say is I'm very much like other volunteers with SCORE nationally. And that is, my background has both executive level positions within Fortune 500 companies, but also I have spent many years in building and developing small businesses, and then eventually selling those and moving on and building further ones and so on. So I have a combination of corporate experience and small business experience. The other component to it is that I guess adds to what many of the individuals who participate as volunteers for SCORE have, is a passion and a desire to be able to help our local communities and to help our local small businesses by giving back and giving of ourselves in that community.
So, this isn't on the list of questions, but I think it's a good question to ask. If somebody wanted to volunteer for SCORE Chicago, how do they do it?
Couple ways, and that is a great question. I appreciate you asking that question, Mark. Couple ways you can do that. First of all, is you can simply call or go to our local website here at SCORE Chicago, or you can go to the score.org, which is our national website, and there's a section right on there in terms of volunteering, and you can connect with that. It will come directly here to us in Chicago, and someone will follow up with you and share with you what the opportunities happen to be able to join our organization and assist other small businesses in our community.
What kind of people do you look for when it comes to volunteers?
Sure. The background could be very, very different. You don't necessarily have to have corporate experience. You don't have to have necessarily even small business experience. But somewhere in there, you have a desire to be able to provide back to the community the skills that you've learned over time. And typically we find is those people have it somewhere in their career, either have been in or wanted to be in some kind of a small business, and again, can share that information back to others. So it's everything from a background in human resources, it could be operations, it could be sales and marketing, it could be finance, it could be legal, you name it. Those skills are all required for any business and can be shared with our local small businesses here in the Chicago area.
I think it's interesting to think of the fact that traditionally people have thought about SCORE as being retired people because it used to be like the service corps of retired executives. But in fact, in this chapter, we have a wide range of ages and interests as far as people volunteering. So if you do have an interest relative to, helping people in small business, then, check us out at scorechicago.org, and Doug or some of the other people will talk to you. We're going to flip over on a couple of events happening here. So just some little information relative to why do people come to SCORE, which I think is prudent, is people come to SCORE because they're looking about starting or buying our businesses. You can see we were doing a workshop on essentially starting buying a business. We also have a relationship with some people who do franchising. So if you're looking at doing a franchise, I think, talking to a SCORE people in person and working down that path can be of value to you. A couple other things people come to SCORE is working with people relative to the SBA, sales declining or growing, some strategic issues, and certainly working on the internet. So if you do have a call, have a question for us, you don't want to give us a call, Rhonda here is on the phone. You can give us a call at 312-738-1060. So Doug, with all of the different choices, because there's so many things you can volunteer for these days, why did you choose SCORE to be your volunteer adventure?
Sure. I guess there's a couple reasons. And one is personal, and that is a personal desire to be able to give back. And it's giving back in an area where I believe I can add value to others in the community. So it is that personal nature of being able to give back. But there's probably a more specific reason why I think it's so important, and that is that we know that small business is the backbone of our local economy, as well as nationally, and everything we can do to help support and grow this small business community not only helps the individual small business owner as well as their employees, but from an economic standpoint, it really helps and drives that growth engine here locally in our Chicagoland community as well as our state.
So I think that, like I said, if you do have an interest relative to working with people in small business, one of the fun things I think has happened in the chapter over the years I've been a volunteer is more and more we're really asking you as an individual what's important to you. And part of the dialogue on do you want to be a volunteer is, what interests you? How do you feel like you can really support the small business environment? And I think that's what makes SCORE Chicago a little bit different than other volunteer opportunities, is rather than telling you this is the job we have for you to do, we really at SCORE Chicago say, what are you interested in? The question is, how can we help you, pursue your interests while at the same time contribute and help out, small business in the Chicago area. So a little bit of my personal commercial here. So Doug, you've been chapter chair for 2 years. What surprised you the most about the small business environment from a chapter chair volunteer perspective?
Sure. The answer is probably going to be a little bit different than you think.
Okay.
So what really surprised me the most was that there are a lot of different opportunities for small business owners in all the different variety of communities or neighborhoods we have in Chicago to avail themselves of some resource to help them. Yet there really are very few, when you look at all the numbers in aggregate, that actually do reach out to some resource to be able to help them grow their business and become more profitable. And that always surprises me, and you start to wonder why that is. And I think it's incumbent upon us and other organizations in the city and the state to be able to look at what are the ways that we're communicating what we do to the small business owners, and do we actually have the reach that we need, as well as from a program standpoint, making sure that we're providing a rich diversity of subject matter and assistance to those small businesses that are needed based on their size, location, and so on.
So why do you think people don't take advantage of the resources that are available to them? Because, we were talking about earlier, is there seems to be more resources available for free to people than ever. Absolutely. Why do you think people aren't taking advantage of them?
That's the part I think we don't know, Mark, and one of the things we have to continue to work on. A lot can be supposition to try to decide, but I think we really need to be out in the community through all the different resource partners and asking what it is that they require that we can provide to them. And some of it may be as simple as where services are delivered. Do people need to go to a location, or can we utilize more technology to begin to deliver things from a virtual perspective or online programming, those types of things? So It's being out in the community. It's probably taking more of the delivery of the services that we provide directly to the small business owners in their communities, and work with the individual community businesses to also assist each other. And I think that's probably the next generation of what will begin to happen, is a lot more intra-community types of programming that can impact a local neighborhood.
So if you're listening and you are a small business and you're not getting help, you feel free to give us a call at 312-738-1060 and tell us why you're not letting us help you. I mean,
Perfect.
what the heck? I mean, we'd love to hear somebody say, hey, I know you guys exist, and here's the reasons why I'm not using your programming. So anyhow, 312-738-1060. So you're finishing your 2-year term here as chapter chair, and I might say that of the chapter chairs that I've experienced, and I guess I've gone through now 4 or 5 of them, I think you've really been at the top of the game there, so thank you for your help.
Pay somebody else for something now. Jeez.
So you're finishing up your 2-year term. How has the small business community in Chicago changed over this 2 or 3 year period?
Yep. Probably goes back a little bit what I was mentioning before. And Chicago, or the greater Chicago community, really is a community of communities. And it's neighborhood by neighborhood have such unique personalities. And then the businesses typically follow suit to the personalities of the community. And we know over time, over the last, call it 7-8 years or more, it's been really very, very difficult, especially from a local standpoint, for small businesses, just through the economy changes and so on. What we're beginning to see now is that is beginning to change a little bit. We're beginning to see an uptick in the development of small businesses at that local neighborhood level, where they are beginning to open and bringing that flair and that personality of the services or products they bring into that community, and people are more open to assist that small business owner by shopping there. We also are beginning to see a larger influx of large corporations who are also focusing on the development of small business from an economic standpoint. So whether it's an American Express Open, or a Goldman Sachs, or a Mass Mutual, or locally here even a Wintrust Bank, much more involvement in the local community to both invest in as well as work with organizations like ours to deliver programming to the small businesses at that local level in order to grow. And that continues to pick up at a greater pace.
So what we're seeing is, as Doug is saying, more big companies saying, gosh, I'd like to come and help you as a small business person. And once again, we're tasked by some of those big companies come to us as Score Chicago saying, we'd like to help small businesses. And the part of our theme here today is that tell us how we might be able to help you. So Score works with people starting businesses and businesses that are up and running. So you've worked with both of those categories. Why are some businesses successful and some seem like they're unable to sustain themselves?
An interesting question. And I think people for years have sort of looked at the small business community and tried to figure out what's going on. And there really hasn't been a lot of research to tell us that. There is one particular one called the Breakthrough Project. And the Breakthrough Project was focusing on what are the needs of that small business community and why do some of those businesses succeed and some of those businesses don't succeed. You'll find it interesting that the results of that basically came back and said that success of small business ultimately was random. But you have to put the caveat on that random was the successful businesses were the ones that did the things that we know make any size business successful. So what you find is the businesses that from a very early stage, whether they're just starting or whether they're in business, focus on the types of financial or operational components of their business that long-term will make them successful. So it's the documentation of what are the processes that we actually do. How do we improve and take the waste out of those so we can become more profitable in the everyday product or service that we deliver. and quite frankly, make it so that that business is sustainable long term, and ultimately can be in a position even to be sold or transferred to another generation of that business. So we can identify those that are successful because they do particular skills, but for the most part, when you don't do those things, it's somewhat random.
You know, one of the observations to build on what you're saying is that I think, especially in Chicago, one of the success metrics as a business is working hard to identify your community and becoming part of that community. And I think traditionally we've thought about communities as physical entities, but in reality, not only are communities physical entities, but they can be, around a theme.
Yep.
And I think that, one of the things is you're looking at your businesses to understand, what is your community and how are you part of that community, which, is one of the challenges I think that a business person has is
Right.
really understanding,
And Mark, you do a lot of work yourself with that, with many businesses, and I think you are really very able to articulate the value of and the definition of community for a small business that sometimes goes outside, as you're saying, what the traditional
Right.
thought of that happens to be.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about operational, you talked about excellence, but what would be like one piece of advice that you might give somebody? Because, people think about SCORE as starting a business. So if I was starting a business, what's one piece of advice you would give somebody who is starting a business?
Sure. Probably if I came up with one area that I would tell someone, it is when you're beginning to start your business from day one, think of planning a successful business. And by that I mean, don't just try to go through the basic steps of getting started, but really begin to think several steps ahead of where you want that business to be, and begin to put all the different pieces of the business in place early on. Don't hope that one day you'll get to them because you want to hurry to market with your product or the service, but you really haven't built the foundation on which to build that business in. And that's where many businesses wind up making a mistake. And then when they finally do get started and they are in business, they're so actively immersed in the business itself, it's very difficult to step back and work on the business.
So what might be an example of something that I should think about early in planning my business that a lot of people don't think about?
Sure. So if you, as an example, have a particular product, what you typically see in the life cycle of a business starting is someone has this idea and they themselves are the person that create the product and so on. And as the business begins to grow, they get a little bit of traction, they're getting revenue, they now hire an employee who then sort of takes over what it was that owner used to do, because now the owner is becoming involved in other things. They have to do the accounting, they have to do the taxes at the end of the year, they're dealing with customer issues. And what they really didn't do was prepare for what happens if that now employee that came onto the business decides to leave, wins the lottery, or whatever reason, and that intellectual property now has left. And how do they quickly go about doing that? So it would be very important from the very beginning and stages is make sure that you're creating a sustainable company no matter what happens over time.
Okay, so we had a call come in, and it's kind of building a little bit on what you're saying here. Does caller on want to ask a question?
Yes.
Okay,
Great.
go ahead. Go ahead, caller. Ask your question, please.
Gentlemen, thank you for taking my call. I was just wondering, really, you kind of asked the question just as I was calling in to build on some of the foundational aspects that Dan, right? Doug, right, that Doug was talking about. I mean, primarily, the one that I really think I know I need business help with are the financial aspects, are finding seed capital investors, how to present business plans, that kind of stuff. Is that what you're talking about, foundational parts of business development for a small business like mine?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I'll start with the no part first.
All right.
So for most of the businesses, the thought of capitalization or eventual, looking for capital other than the basic things they need to start is not in their planning cycle. So for that group, what they're really thinking about from a foundation standpoint is what are the operational pieces that I need to get ready to start my business? Where's my location going to be, if it's going to be a brick and mortar location?
Okay, like
how do I
supply chain stuff?
Supply chain,
okay.
Absolutely. Then you have a different type of business, one that really is thinking from the very beginning of, I really do have a growth plan and a trajectory that I want to begin to grow my company on, and understand what they need from a capital investment standpoint in order to be able to achieve that in the time frame that they want. So you really have different types of business owners, and the needs are different. But let me go back to the one part that the question that you did ask, and that was the understanding and the financial information that a person needs. And what we typically find is when many people are looking for capital of some kind, typically they're going for bank loans or so on, and that they don't get those bank loans because they haven't prepared themselves or their businesses to be financially sound, number one. Number
Right.
two, they don't have the educational awareness from a financial standpoint to even know what it is that they need. So that's a critical thing that organizations like SCORE can assist businesses in the education of what's needed, helping them with the development of the financial modeling, whether it's business plans or just financials by themselves, and so on.
Right. Doug, that's very clear. Can I just
Go ahead.
sort of dovetail this a little bit? So, as as I would build this business, like you were just talking about IP just a
Right.
couple minutes ago. If I have an IP contingent or not, I have some intellectual property, and I'm going through the patent law and all that business, and I'm coming closer and closer to that point of really getting to market.
Right.
All that while, these are the foundational elements of the business that you're talking about. Those are what I should be focusing on while I'm building up that initial sort of entry into the marketplace.
Sure.
That's like really hard.
Well, it
Yeah.
is, but you think it's hard now? Wait till the business gets started, and you have to take a step back to try to do that
Right.
because you're so immersed in everything else.
Yeah,
So that and the fact that if you're doing your business planning, so let's look at it from a process perspective. So one of the things that we see when people come in sort of after the fact is that they've begun to develop a business plan, but they really never thought through exactly step by step what it was going to take in order to create the product or the service that they're going to be able to do.
Right.
And when you get them to begin to focus on that and document it and understand what the real value of each of the cost perspectives happen to be, before you know it, when they do model that, they say, well, my gosh, I can never sell this, for what I wanted to,
Right,
because
yeah.
I'll lose money on every one. So
Right.
it's as simple sometimes as that, or realizing what it's going to take in order to deliver that product or service that you've built.
Okay, that's
So
very
something
very,
I would suggest from a foundational point of view is you have an idea of your business and you have a business plan. Share that idea with your collaborators, especially other people in your community, and more specifically with your banker. If you're opening up a banking account for your business, instead of just going and opening up an account and saying, I need to find a place to do my deposits,
Right.
go into the bank and say, I would like to work with a banker who's going to help me grow my business, because that banker is going to have ideas on how to help you financially. I'm going to have to run because we only have
That's
a minute
fine.
left, so
Thank
I'm
you so
going to
much.
drop you off.
Thank you.
You can't follow up. I'm going to hit a few really key slides here before we finish up. A couple other points here was we've talked about SCORE offers you lots of things what they can help you with. You can find us on Twitter at SCORE Chicago. Our YouTube channel is at SCORE Chicago Video. This program will be posted on it in a couple of days. Our website is scorechicago.org. As Doug was talking about, you can give us a call at 312-353-7724. Well, Doug, I wanted to thank you for you being my guest. I wanted to thank you for your 2 years at SCORE Chicago. The wonderful thing about SCORE Chicago is we have a great chapter chair leaving and we have a great chapter chair coming in.
Yep.
So I really would ask you to take advantage of the resources. If you've got some things you need that you're for some reason not fulfilling, just drop us an email. Once again, you can also email us at scorechicago.org. With that, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.